Welcome to the theEWpodcast. I'm your host, Eric White. Today, I speak with one of my best friends, Katie Hackett. Katie is a singer and songwriter who has been on a crazy ride over the past year. After believing her dream of being a musician was dead, this last February 2021, she debuted her extraordinary talents on a Desert Hearts Black EP under the name Katie Kilbride. The EP is titled Birds on a Wire, and you can find a link to it in the notes. Not only was she able to work with two of our best friends on the EP, Marbs and Evan Casey, who actually are previous guests on the show, but a track from that debut EP was reworked by one of the most popular DJs and producers on the planet, Damian Lazarus. Katie is one of the kindest and most positive people I know, and I think you'll get a good sense of her vibe here. As always, I cherish this time spent with Katie, and I'm honored that she agreed to make her podcast premiere on my show. So, without further ado, here is Katie Kilbride. Katie Hackett. Should I call you Katie Hackett for this or Katie Kilbride?
It's kind of up to you. I think Katie Hackett's fine, and then I think maybe when we talk about the music side, maybe I can just explain why.
Yeah.
It's Katie Kilbride.
Yeah.
It's not to confuse people. Same person.
One and the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So, first podcast.
Yeah. I've never done this before. I've been on the other side of the camera. I've produced a few podcasts, but I've never been a guest. So this is an honor, and I'm so jazzed, especially considering I'm in the mix with my husband.
Yeah.
Kevin Hackett did one,
Yep.
and my dad, Patrick Kilbride, did one. So
You get the whole family
yeah,
tree.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are you nervous right now at all?
A little bit. I think I'll shake it out. Yeah.
I always get nervous before every podcast. I'm always like, oh man, a lot has happened for you recently. It's been a whirlwind of a year already, huh?
It really has. Just a lot of growth personally, lifelong dreams fulfilled. Things that I've been working on for a really long time have all kind of come to fruition all around the same time, which is pretty magical and powerful after kind of finishing my 33rd year, heading into my 34th. Celebrating a birthday and launched one of the biggest projects that I've had my eyes on for pretty much my entire life. So
yeah,
it's been pretty cool.
It's cool. What was it? Herself that did the interview?
Yeah, himself, her.
Yeah. I loved in that interview how you talked about growing up and singing songs about adventures, lands you'd visited, in your imagination and friends. So you've been singing for your whole life.
Yeah, I've been singing as long as I can remember. My parents said I actually sang before I talked.
Really?
Yeah, and it was something that I would do for myself. I was an only child, so I think it was like a form of entertainment.
Yeah.
And then also I love to perform in front of my parents, if it was just a dinner with us three, or in front of full family gatherings, with my grandparents. I'd be on the staircase and everybody would be turning to watch me.
That's awesome.
And we were always really encouraged by my family to just get up, and it was kind of a part of the dinner routine. It was dinner and a show, and I was usually the show with my either family friends or cousins, and we'd make up dance routines. And but yeah, singing, it was something that I used to express myself, and it was kind of just when I was younger, I'm talking 2-3 years old, I was singing, and I would just kind of be free thought, I would go. Sometimes my mom would say for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and people would be like, oh, she's so cute. But all right, time to stop now. My mom would be up there go, Katie.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was really awesome to grow up in a family that was so encouraging of pursuing whatever my passion was. And at the time it was singing. And then I realized it was something that I really felt like I wanted to do and pursue. Mm-hmm. So I was in chorus, and I would perform in front of assembly, and I would, participate in the talent shows, and I was in the dance company at school. So that was a huge way for me to express myself. And then when I got into high school, that's kind of when American Idol started to be in its peak. And I saw another one of my friends actually from Hawaii. She entered, and she made it. I think she was top 8 or something. And I was kind of always looking at her. Her name was Camille. Shout out Camille.
Nice.
She was a big inspiration for me of like, okay, maybe, someone from Hawaii, growing up in Maui, like I could do this too. And so my mom, she was like, well, do you want to move to the mainland? And that's where all her family lived. And she asked me, do you want to go to Hollywood and, kind of pursue this? And I was really scared. And I had kind of, 16, you're like, you're not wanting to leave your friends. You're like in high school. It was like a really hard thing for me to decide to leave, to go and do that. But ultimately looking back, it was really, I was just scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just fear of failure and rejection.
Yeah. Fear of failure and rejection, not thinking I was going to be good enough. Even though like my whole life, my family and friends were like hyping me up. Right. But you never really know if like they're just saying that because they're your family or if like you really are that good. And so for me, I was a little intimidated to like go in front of people that I had admired in like the Hollywood scene, singers and stuff that would, maybe, I don't know, like shut me down, or I feel like that my confidence, my inner confidence wasn't built up enough yet where I could felt like I could handle that. But then, so some time went on, and I graduated high school. I went to college. And I kind of felt like it was one of those, like I call it like a fork in the road moment. Like if I went this way, like my life trajectory could have been totally different, and I decided to go this way. And my life is awesome the way it is now. But kind of in between in my 20s, I kind of felt like I had missed out, or I'd missed my opportunity. And like there's been some deep regret that I've carried in my life about that. Like I don't carry regret really about anything else.
Yeah.
Like there's silly things that you do when you're younger, but like that's something I felt like was what I was made to do. And it was like I was delivered this opportunity. Like my parents were like willing to send me to Hollywood, and I said no. So
that's such a weird thing, like how someone can have all the talent available to them, and it seems as though they're made for something. I'm sure I've talked to your dad. Your dad loves you, adores you very much, and seems like he was probably very supportive of you growing up. It's just so weird how there's that fear all the time. And I don't know if that's just something some people experience or everyone experiences it. I mean, when you're first starting off, it has to be a pretty common thing. I feel like I
would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, did you experience that maybe, like starting
every
the podcast?
day.
Yeah.
I still do. I'm still just like, oh shoot. I'll listen to, I don't know if this is the same for you, but I'll listen to someone I look up to and be like, oh my God, I can't hold water to this person. Like, but I mean, it's like, I firmly believe that there's like varying levels of starting talent people have with things, but anybody can get better at something if they just work at it, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
there's always room for improvement no matter where you're starting. So.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting, the fear tied in with the comparison. It's like, I don't know, I feel like those often go hand in hand in collaboration with something that you care a lot about. Like if you didn't care about it, like for me personally, like if I didn't care enough about singing, like I maybe wouldn't have compared myself to someone and maybe wouldn't have been as scared. But there's like a lot more at stake with something that I'm really passionate about, that I want to do really well in, especially amongst people that I look up to, like just like you do. I think like it just kind of like raises the bar a little bit. Yeah. And for me, I feel like that's like when the fear kind of increases, when the comparison's there. But it's like once we take the comparison away and you're able to just like recognize like I'm doing this for me and I'm not doing this for anybody else. I'm not doing this to get anybody else's approval or kind of like nod of like good job. It's just like once you realize that that's a gift that you have to share with the world, and once I kind of identified that, like all that other fear stuff kind of like fell away.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I've been trying to do a morning mantra every day. I watch this. I don't know if you're familiar with Lex Friedman at all. He's this really smart guy, works on like artificial intelligence and stuff. But he has this video where he's going through his day, and one of the things he does is this morning mantra, and he lays out all the things that he talks to himself about. And he like sets rules for himself for the day. And one thing I've been trying to do every day is take a moment to be like, okay, you have limitations, accept those with grace. And if they really bother you, then work hard to improve in that area, right?
Yeah.
Who were you? Yeah. Who were you looking up to back then that like you? Yeah.
Man, I mean, Gwen Stefani, she was like Gwen Stefani, Lauryn Hill, Stevie Nicks, like those were like my top. But Gwen Stefani, there was just something about her. She was the first concert I saw, the first CD I had. I put her CD in my time capsule in elementary school.
Nice.
Like and then I got to meet her when I was 13. Like it was just like, oh, day made. My dad actually got us backstage passes to go and see her when she came to Maui. And it was people that had kind of just more of like an eclectic style, and I didn't feel like was necessarily like tied to like a specific genre. It was almost like they could kind of flow between like maybe more like poppy, but there was some like they dipped into more like reggae or like kind of folk or it was really like strong female vocalists that had like really incredible lyrics. For the most part, like Lauryn Hill too, her just like sultry, her voice, man, and like the tonality of her voice and like her lyrics. So it definitely had a lot to do with like what they were saying. It wasn't just like a good like beat, So that's, I think, was a big inspiration for me in drawing my own experience, because a lot of those people that I just mentioned, they were writing songs about like, they were kind of telling stories. And so that's kind of where I took inspiration to like write my own songs that were like kind of poems. And then I don't know, there was like last night, it actually just happened to me. Like I just get these like downloads of like these melodies that I hear, and then I just kind of start playing around with lyrics. I'm not writing anything down like the first pass. I'm kind of just like singing it out loud. And oddly enough, it usually happens when I'm like in the shower. I don't know. Do you have like these aha shower moments? I feel like it's kind of like
sometimes I'll be doing. It happens more to me if I'm working out or like running. Okay. Then I'll just have a moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a good idea. Yeah. Do you take time to write it down after you get out of the shower? Like, what's that?
So
like?
There's like a voice recorder app in my phone, and I usually like after I practice it a few times, it's kind of like the repetition of getting it in my body and kind of hearing what it sounds like. I'm like, and then as soon as I get out of the shower, I just sing into my phone, and that's usually the first time because I want to make sure that I remember the melody and what it sounds like, because sometimes when I found if like I just go straight to write it down and I haven't recorded it, I sometimes like something else will come in and like or another song will kind of take over. So it's that, and then I usually put that to paper, and then I start developing kind of what the
that's
song
cool.
is. Yeah.
So do you have like a notebook then that's just kind of fragmented ideas that you're going to build out later?
Yep. I have it in a notebook. I have a few actually. My mom sent me my ones that I had from when I was younger.
Nice.
And then there's ones I usually bring, like smaller one that I'll bring with me on like trips and stuff. And like I'll bring it with me on like a hiking trail, and like usually always have like a pen with me. And then I'll also have them in my phone, because sometimes it's just like I'll just like type it out, or I do like talk to text and I just kind of get it out. But yeah, it's in all different places. I would love for it to all live in one notebook like eventually, but I kind of know like it's almost like the stage of my life. Like these were all kind of like younger stage, and then now I have kind of a different looking book. But yeah, it's cool.
That's cool. Have you ever fleshed out any of the ideas that were in your books from when you were younger? Like, do any of them still hold water to you? Do you feel like they would become something cool, or are you just right now in the mode of creating new ideas?
Yeah, it's so interesting that you asked that question. That is actually what happened with When Yesterday Ends, which is on the B-side of Birds on a Wire, the new EP that just got released. Yeah, so that was a concept actually that I had when I was younger, and I developed it more to be a little bit more current to today. But like I really did want to go back to that time, like when I was really in it. And there was like a lot of things, like going through your first like serious relationship, falling in love for the first time, getting your heart broken for the first time, all of those things. And like I feel like I had a lot of like emotion inside of me as a young child, and like writing was the way for me to kind of get that out. So it was cool to kind of revisit that.
Yeah, that is cool. It's those kinds of things. I feel like, I mean, we all have those experiences that are super relatable. It can be everyone. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that we all go through experiences where there's a lot of commonality and room to relate with one another. And it's just interesting to go back to your childhood and pull those things that, will relate across people in that age range, but also at our age right now, it's still something that resonates and still something that people can, understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time it was like a concept more of like, I wanted to, be with this person, and like, we couldn't be together, and like I was staying up, and it was kind of more that was like the idea. But now as I'm older, And especially writing in like during COVID in such a time where like separation and isolation were just like, that was our life and our existence. Like I wanted to take that more as like what was happening as a society, not so much as like a love story. So, and I do think it's really interesting when songs, even when I write them, that like they can have parallel meanings. And to your point, like someone could relate to something, someone could relate to that as a love song, or someone could relate to it as a friend that they haven't seen, or, you know, just again, the larger like world view of what's happening right now. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I think we were talking about that, I think in sometime last year in Palm Springs, maybe, about how the best art is open to interpretation, right? It's like the listener, the viewer gets what means the most out of it to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. I wanted to talk about COVID too, and how that, like, what role has that played in your recent foray or, you know, experience as a recording artist now, officially a recording artist. So sick.
Thank
so
you.
Yeah, just, I guess for background, I didn't really start this off with like who you are, but I'll put that in the intro for sure. But you recently just came out with your first EP with our friends Marbs and Evan Casey.
I did.
And there's a reshape by the legendary Damian Lazarus, which is a
Unreal.
crazy bar to set for your first one. But this all happened in the midst of one of the hardest times of our lives, easily.
Yeah.
Like COVID is an unprecedented challenge. So how does that happen? How do you like seize on this dream that's kind of been latent in you for a long time during this really tumultuous period?
So that's awesome. Thank you for asking. Because this journey for me, I feel like it's one of those things that like it was undeniable. And as I've had time to reflect, COVID, a lot of people like went internal. They went into their houses. You know, you're not out and go. And that was kind of my life up until COVID happened. Like I was like always making plans with friends. It was always the next thing. It was the next show. It was the next, you know, camping trip. It was the next, like, where are we going to go internationally this year? You know, like it was like the next festival, you know, planning for Burning Man. It was always something that was happening in the future, which looking back, wasn't really allowing me to be super present. And it wasn't really allowing me to like slow down and like literally sit outside. And Kevin, my husband, and I started bird watching.
Yep. You guys know every bird now. It's really impressive.
So that ability to slow down and just notice what was actually happening around me was such an inspiration for my writing that I was writing so much. And like we did a van trip to Sedona, and I wrote kind of the call and response to Birds on a Wire on the top of like a vortex.
That's awesome.
In Sedona, because I was just allowing myself to kind of just be and experience and kind of take in like what was trying to be delivered to me at the time. So my inspiration for writing was I feel like magnified during this time because I was allowed to like slow down, which was pretty cool. In a time that like I probably wouldn't have like sat outside and literally watched the birds. And that's where an inspiration for Birds on a Wire came from. There's like these telephone wires outside of my house, and these birds would be sitting on the wire, and then they would literally fly down to like my doorstep, and I would be sitting there with them. And like, there's this black Phoebe bird because we are bird watchers now. So if anyone knows that
flash an image of it on screen.
Phoebe, but they like this one bird, and I feel like it is the same bird, would like constantly look at me and kind of be communicating with me. It has like a really beautiful like kind of chirp song, and then it would like, you know, fly away, and then these huge crows would come down and do the same thing, like these huge black crows. There's a mockingbird nest that was like in our back tree, and like all these things that I would have never even like maybe even like realized before, other than just like, oh, that's a beautiful bird. But it allowed me to like write this song and have this kind of experience, because I feel like birds are communicating with me on a deeper level from like a spiritual place of like, they have the ability to kind of transcend between these worlds of kind of like spirit, whatever you believe. I believe that. And kind of more physical and kind of touching in between the both. They literally fly and soar in between both worlds.
Yeah.
And so that's the inspiration for birds. And so the ability to start writing also allowed me to like really tap into that inner voice saying like, you need to do this. Cause again, all the other distractions were kind of away. And so that voice kept getting louder and louder and louder. And it was like, Katie, like, just do it. Like, come on, do it already. Like, you got this. Like, it was just almost like building my own confidence up of like, okay, I'm going to do this. And as soon as I was like, okay, I want to do this, I started communicating it to my friends. Those friends so happened to be Evan Casey and Marbs, like two of like, I feel like the most talented people in their space. And they were actually looking for a female vocalist. And so it was kind of just one of those moments that it was like, okay, we don't know when we're going to start working together, but we are. And we were just trying to figure out the time. We got like the timing right. I went up to LA to their studio where they had been streaming from, which they've totally like reinvented what it is to be, I feel like, a musician in like this day and like being able to stream on Twitch. And so we got in the studio and like they listened to me sing and they were just like, what? Like, it was, again, it felt like a hidden talent that I had been, and it literally has been, because it's been something I've kept so close to myself and like my family and maybe my friends that I grew up with that literally like heard me in assembly. But outside of that, when I got older, it wasn't something that I like led with, like, hey, I'm Katie and, you know, I like to sing and I want to do that, you know, more. So they invited me in, and that's kind of like where the process and journey began.
Is history. Yeah. I love what you're saying about the slowing down thing, because I, as you know, went through like a depressed period. And I was working for Desert Hearts crew, which Marbs and Evan Casey, and now you are a part of, right? I guess you're...
I'm signed to Desert Hearts Black, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
For these 2 songs.
Yeah.
Hopefully do more. But yeah, I've been part of the community for a while.
Yeah, we've both been part of the festival community.
That's how we met.
For sure, yeah. But yeah, during that period, I was doing video for the Desert Hearts crew, doing video at the festivals, and I would always feel so rushed at the festivals that by the last day, I felt like I hadn't even been there. Like, it felt as though I didn't connect with anybody. I didn't appreciate the moments I was in. I was just stressed about, is this getting shot? Are we shooting this? Is everything charged? And it's just like, take a second to chill out and slow down. And then whenever I did slow down, I had an experience I've talked about a few times on mushrooms, where I just like, all the therapy I'd been doing all came together in this really crazy way. But it was because I'd let myself slow down, get into that moment, you know? And it's just, I don't know. I feel like the value of that is just lost sometimes, you know? I feel like sometimes still, it's hard for me to just slow down and be.
And that's like really interesting. That's like come up a lot now in like my work about the kind of like achiever mentality of like needing to, you know, it's great to have goals and set goals and hit them and then like make a new goal and then reach that one. There comes a point though when like, if you're constantly just setting goals and trying to reach it, like, and you're not happy, it's like kind of like, what's the limit to that? And then you're constantly always kind of like searching for that next like kind of level almost. Yeah. Whereas I feel like COVID really just, it forced people to like be happy with what they had, which was literally the walls of their house, the food that they were able to eat, whoever they were, you know, cohabitating with, you know, their roommate, partner, husband, wife, and kind of almost get back to the basics of what's like important, like going and experiencing nature, you know, not maybe going out to like, I don't know, the bars or fancy restaurants or whatever, traveling. Those are all really nice things that we're really fortunate to be able to do. But kind of like just going back and stripping down to like what's most meaningful, I found was like one of the greatest gifts of COVID for me personally.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Katie. And I totally agree. And I think it's an interesting double-edged sword. It's going to be interesting to see how we come out of this time, because I think there's going to be a lot of people who maybe come out of it feeling like you, and I feel stronger after COVID. And I think there's going to be whenever I had Evan and Marbs on the show, we talked briefly about how the Renaissance period followed the Black Plague. Like the Black Plague came and then the Renaissance kind of grew out of that misery. But I don't know. We don't have to go too far down this rabbit hole, but it's just, I want to acknowledge
I love your rabbit holes, Eric.
that there's people who were forced to think about their life, and maybe there wasn't enough good in it that made it seem worth doing better at. Does that make sense? Where now you're at home and, we're both lucky we have loving partners and good places to live and jobs. We had jobs during this time, but it's also...
There's people that were not as fortunate, and I totally recognize that. And I mean, it's a fact, like suicide rates are going up, drug overdoses are going up, people like hunger, homelessness, all of those things are going up because of what's been happening with our economy and with the world, which is, it's really, it's a reality. And so I definitely know, like, I'm not the majority by any means, but I am just really grateful for, what I have been able to create. And I do think that goes, kind of zoomed out more into just like how I live my life. Like, I really do feel like I've been able to, I don't know, maybe manifest, that word is like played out too much, but I really feel like I have set intention and set forth into motion what I want my life to be, down to like the people I surround myself with, the house I live in, the person that I'm married to, the dog that I have, the job that I have. Like, I can go back in my life in a single amount of times, like on more than two hands, and like prove that almost. And it's like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's something that I do think people have within them of like tapping into that and like kind of creating the life that you want. And some people may think that that's hokey or whatever, but like, for me, I feel like I'm living like kind of proof of that.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm like an anomaly.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring this up because before we chatted, I was thinking about things that might come up, and this was one of them. Manifesting what you want from your life and kind of, what is it? Positive, like it's kind of a new age thing. Yeah. The power of positive thinking. And this is an interesting time for that because, okay, so let me preface this by saying that I love what has come to you, and I love how you've worked for it, and I think you deserve all the success that you're experiencing, and I'm extremely happy for you, Katie.
Thank you.
And I hope that stories like this can balance the scales with the other side of the spectrum, because there is power in your mindset for sure. And I do believe that you are an example of a person's ability to shift your mindset in a way that helps you serve the things that you believe are important to you. And I'm not sure that's true for everyone, and I guess what I'm saying is that I'm happy there's stories like you coming out that do give hope. And there's, what the Desert Hearts community does for people in terms of, especially during this time, giving people a place to feel safe and have fun, that's affecting a lot of people, and people who might have the cards stacked against them in certain ways that makes it harder for them to achieve what they want to achieve. And so I just think it's really important that stories like this exist and that, this happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is power to being able to, like, again, these are things that I'm like learning now in my job, but stacking like positive thoughts, like you have the ability to stack negative thoughts. However, like when you go in that place, like it literally is proven, like fear and stress, like lower your immune system versus like stacking positive thoughts. Like it's something that you have that choice and that ability to do. And it's like, it's kind of like up to you and your decision to be able to do that. That said, if there are people that are in like horrible situations and they're not going to get out of it by just like thinking positively.
Right.
So like there comes like the thought, but I also feel like it has to be met with like action as well.
Yeah.
It's not just like sitting there and hoping and wishing and
Exactly.
and praying. So it does come with action, to your point, also hard work to create like, I mean, like the life you've created as well, like it's not just by power of positive thinking. I think that there's an element to that, stacking the good with then moving in the direction that you want to move in, and then like kind of acting on it. But it has to be like a conscious choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you touched on something earlier too that I was hoping we would talk about, and you didn't disappoint. You brought it up right away. Was just timing.
Yeah.
I think, there's like the first person kind of thing where it's the positive thinking. That's the first person sort of self-improvement, I guess. I hate trying to like I don't want to feel like I'm telling people how to live. Like I'm not in that space. But there's
Yeah.
a first person sort of mindset where it's like, I'm going to think these thoughts to help me do the things I want to do. And then there's kind of the second person thing, which is the world around you happening. Mm-hmm. And it's whenever those two are kind of in the same melody and the rhythm is the same, that you recognize opportunities better for what they are, right? Like, it's like, if you're, again, I'll speak to myself. Whenever I was depressed, there was undoubtedly things that if I wasn't depressed, I would have looked at as a meaningful opportunity.
Sure.
But because the timing was messed up,
You were seeing it through that lens.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't allow you to see it properly.
Yeah. So it's just a beautiful thing whenever those things sync up and your mindset and the world around you match, and it's cool.
And I also feel like there's like an exponential, almost like reaction that happens when you start just getting in that state. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, in my mind, in my experience, because it's not like this has always been me, like I'm still really working on myself a lot. Like, because there's been certain times, where, I get frustrated, or I get, I've been in states of depression as well. And thinking in that time that it was a choice is kind of like crazy, because it's like, obviously I wouldn't choose to be here. I would love to be happy.
Yeah.
Now that I've kind of gotten to the other side of kind of doing a lot more of this work, I'm noticing that it is more of a choice. But it's coming from the state that I'm in.
Right.
Like, so I don't know if that makes sense. Like, it's easier for me to understand it now that I'm on the other side of it, but I've been in the place of not thinking that it was a choice.
Right. Yeah. It's a weird paradox that I've spent some time thinking about too, where it's like, looking back on things like that, it's so obvious, what was wrong.
It's like, duh.
But in that moment,
you can't see it. It's hard to see. Yeah.
Really
I've been there before.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Birds on a Wire EP has been crushing it. Absolutely.
Yeah, we made it on the charts.
Yeah. So what's this experience been like for you, going from having this dream to feeling like you passed up your opportunity to now Damian Lazarus is noticing you? And what's that been like?
It's wild. It feels so surreal. It's kind of those moments where it's taken me a little while for it to like sit in and like settle, and realize like this is really happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also feeling really, really proud of myself. And that's something that I personally don't often say a lot about myself, because I don't know if you feel this way too, but like sometimes when I feel like I say it out loud, like I'm really proud of myself. Like I feel almost like a little conceited, or like I'm bragging, but it's like, what is that about in like our society where like I'm genuinely proud of myself, but it's almost like I feel shame for even expressing that.
For sure. Yeah.
Do you ever feel that way?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. All the time. That's one thing I actually admire about you, Katie, is that I wouldn't have guessed that was true, because I've noticed that you are really good at acknowledging that you're proud of yourself and that you're happy for what you accomplished. And I think that's an admirable thing. Like, there's a lot of weird things in our society that are taboo for some reason. Like, this is really off topic, but to just illustrate the point of like good things being taboo, announcing that you've made a charitable donation, like making a charitable donation. And then I posted something on Instagram. I was like, make a donation with me. And then 5 minutes later, I was like, oh man, that's so conceited, like so narcissistic.
But when you're really giving to someone else,
yeah,
like,
I know. Isn't it weird though? But there's like this weird line of narcissism and altruism that is hard to walk, where it's like, we should all be proud of ourselves, but we should also want to help other people, but those shouldn't be mutually exclusive.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, the reaching the point of feeling like I can say I'm proud of myself, especially for something that's so personal when it comes to like my singing, and being able to sing, like my first stream on Twitch was in front of 13,000 people all over the world.
Sick.
Like, think about your first performance as like, I mean, it's like usually in like a bar on like an open mic night, that nobody's, maybe even there. And Another thing that has been such a blessing with COVID is like the ability to use technology to reach people that, you know, you maybe would have never reached before. And like, I know that Evan and Marbs have experienced the same thing, but like the connection, like the stuff that's going on in like the chat of people just, you know, communicating from all over, and like, and everybody's just really, you know, respectful and like wanting you to do well, and like is really supportive, and like that feels good. And to be able to see that in real time, like you couldn't do that at like a show. You're maybe seeing people talk in the crowd. You don't know what they're talking about, you know, like they could be saying whatever they're saying, but to see it real time, there's also something I feel like that's also built into kind of this whole experiment that I think is really cool too. Getting that real time feedback. And I love feedback, good, bad, and different. I just think living in the feedback loop for me has been really beneficial in like my personal life and my work, in music. Like I tell Marbs and Evan, like, do you like this? Like, do you want to keep this? Should we change this word? You know, they're like, and they've just been so gracious and just like, Katie, this is your part. Like you know, you got this. Like we love it. Like you're doing great. So, but it's been really cool to be able to like collaborate with them in that way. And so I think it's just being able to sing in front of that many people kind of just validated me as an artist. And that also is something crazy to say, you know, thinking that this was something that I was just kind of holding for me. Now I've shared it with the world and people are receiving it really well. And I can call myself an artist now, which again is this other label that I felt like was reserved for these people that I put on this pedestal that like, again, going back to the comparison, that I didn't think I was ever going to be able to reach. And then here I am, and like, it's like official, and like that is so freaking cool. And it's just like it's cool. It's so cool. So it's just those moments that you look back on, because they've kind of all been stacking. So it's like, you know, Marbs and Evan wanted to work with me. We started working on the track. They basically did a 10-hour session in the studio to write Birds and produce that, which is like something unheard of for them. But like it's just been in this crazy flow state that like, then we recorded it, you know, we got it through like the mastering process. And then they were trying to see who was going to be doing like the remix or the reshape, ended up getting sent over to Damian Lazarus, which is just like all these things that kept like growing and growing and growing. And he's been so supportive of it. And like, is someone that, you know, obviously like, everyone knows if you're in the space, but that we've also looked up to and really admire. And the fact that he has reshaped this track is just, again, it's another one of those moments that really validates the project. Not that we need the validation, but it feels damn good. Yeah,
for sure. No, I totally know what you mean. It's like, you don't want to be in a place, and this happens to me all the time, where, you know, at the beginning of this podcast, there was definitely a desire to be like validated, to be recognized as like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. And that's just not a good thing to do something for, you know? It's like, it's better to do the thing for the sake of the thing, and then be appreciative if the validation does come.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of how this is all worked its magic. It's just like, I was doing it for me. Once I realized like, I'm going to share this is something I need to do for myself. It's almost like giving that gift back to like my soul's like purpose. And it's like, once I did that and it's like kind of stepped through, it's like, then all these other things was kind of like a magnet to it. And it was just like, it's like, yes, we've been waiting, you know, like please continue. So I'm excited. I don't know where this is going to lead. I'm really jazzed to get back in the studio with Marbs and Evan. We're going to look at like April, May timeframe. But there's some new music we want to make. And I don't know where it goes from there, but I am like, I'm still writing more than ever. Again, like last night I had this like really awesome download come in, and it was about being who you want to be and not have to be something for anybody else. And then it's about kind of just like, once you're in that acceptance state, it's kind of just like letting your tears fall down and just kind of just releasing and like kind of letting it go. And then, because I just feel like that really ties in kind of crazy to the conversation we've been having. But it's like, you're not doing it for the validation of anybody else. You're doing it for you. And once you have that, it is a sort of like this emotional release, because it's like, I don't have to be anyone for anyone. Right. Yeah.
100%. It makes the thing more fun. Like, there was a period of time where this podcast just wasn't fun because I wasn't getting the validation I wanted. And I was like judging my work based on like views or who was saying something. And now I've done work to let that go. I've also switched the focus up. Like this was all about mental health.
Yeah.
Put a lot of pressure on me, and I switched it up to be just my interest. Just do it because you're interested, you know?
That's awesome.
And it's like takes the pressure off. And I feel like, I don't know, I can see how your experience would almost be like a weight lifted off your shoulders, where it's like, I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. And the fact that I'm doing it feels great. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I'm getting the validation is just the cherry on top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you switch, like for your initial intention, it's like if your intention is in the right place and like being authentic to who you are and having integrity, those are like two huge, very important qualities in just my life. As I've been gravitating more towards that, and it sounds like as you've been gravitating more towards that, what's met with that are like these other additional gifts and more joy and happiness that you have versus like the intention of like needing the significance of the validation or the accreditation or like the platform to be like whatever, number one, or like, that once that's separated, it's like, that's almost like more of a hassle.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it goes back to like the slowing down thing too. Cause like in that mindset, it's easy to just be like, I need to do this. I need to do this. This is the pathway. But you're not taking time to slow down and just accept the thing that's happening in the moment, right? Yeah.
And the gifts that maybe are coming to you when you don't slow down.
Yeah.
Because you can't even recognize what they are. Because you're just like, again, you have like a different lens or a filter on. You have blinders up, whatever the analogy you want to use. But it doesn't, I just don't feel like you can really see it clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to... There's something in the himself, her interview. And we'll provide a link to this in the notes. But something that your friend group up here didn't know about. That's your college reggae band.
Oh my gosh.
And so I had to make sure that we talked about it here.
Great.
Yeah. So you were in a college reggae band.
I was.
You were the singer.
I was the singer, yes. My buddy Marvin, shout out to Marvin. He was the bass player, and my other friend Kai was the drummer. We started by just playing at Kai's house, like in his garage. It was like literally a college garage, like reggae band. And I went to school with Kai, but the other guys that were like hanging out with us, they went to a different school. I think they went to San Diego State. I went to USD. And but we all found each other because we were all from Hawaii. So all the Hawaii people, like when they moved to the mainland, they really do all find each other. And so it was like, you want like local food, or you want to listen to like the music, go to the parties. So we all found each other that way. And I was just singing for my girlfriends, again, who are all from Hawaii. They're like, you should sing with like Marvin and them. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know, they played. So it was kind of just turned into one of those things that we'd sing in their garage. I was singing like reggae songs and...
were these covers or were you...
Yeah, covers.
Yeah.
And it was just really fun. It was just like something that, again, it went back to fueling that inner creative part that like I had kind of abandoned, it felt like, and it was like, I didn't care that it was just in a garage, at the time. And then it moved on to, okay, we're going to play these backyard parties.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And then we played a couple parties. It was fun, like a couple barbecues and like, had the full setup, me and guitar, bass, drummer. And it was really fun. I feel like I just had like a blast. I had a really good time. And then it was like, okay, maybe we can perform on campus. Ooh. And then we like played on campus outside of the library during lunch. And so nice. At USD playing with a bunch of local guys maybe wasn't necessarily, I don't know, the USD crowd, I guess. But like, but all my friends came to like cheer me on and celebrate. And it was just one of those things I felt like it was so awesome to just be on stage and sing. And it was awesome. So it was brief. It was like really fun to be able to just connect with those guys. They were like artists and, I hope that they're all doing well. I feel like I haven't connected with them in a while, so we've been talking about this. I'm like, I got to reach out to those guys. They're awesome. So, but it was cool. It was.
Do any videos exist of this?
Videos exist. Yeah, I'll have to find them. They were on I feel like they were on Facebook for a minute, but I may have made them hidden.
Just
because again, it was going back. Yeah, it was kind of again. I was still in that time of excited that I was doing it, but like it's not like I really wanted anybody to know. And it's like that was kind of like my 20s of still kind of feeling like a little bit of shame around it or feeling like judged because of maybe like the genre that I was singing, and people like look at me and like I was singing reggae music, even though that's what I grew up on like my whole life. Like I have been to so many countless reggae shows. And that's how I found this group of people here, is we would go to a bunch of reggae shows in San Diego at the World Beat Center.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right
that was like, it was my jam. Yeah. And so, yeah, I felt kind of, I don't know, maybe like I was going to be judged like for the type of music that it was, but.
Really? So that's crazy that growing up, as you entered your, or whenever you were 16, you didn't take the opportunity partially because you were fear of rejection, fear of failure. And then once you did have some music going, it was like a fear of now being judged through that. So
the type of
like
music.
A ton of fear around it. Yeah.
And judgment. Yeah. I've dealt with that in a large part of my life. And I think that there's something to say about the judgment that you think others have on you. And if you're projecting that into the world, again, this is just my belief. If you're projecting that into the world, there's going to be some sort of reality that's going to come true. And so I don't know, I can't go back and say what if, but like moving forward now, let's use this time of the Birds on a Wire release. I wasn't putting any of that out there. I was putting out like, this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. I'm working with my friends. This is going to be received really well. Not in a state that I was like, again, not going to that like conceited, like, I don't know, more like puffed up than I needed to be. I was like ready. Yeah. And I felt like I was the only one that was holding me back, but I was also projecting that. And I do feel like there's been times, even within like certain friend groups, maybe I've projected, and maybe you've experienced this too, of like thinking that somebody doesn't like you.
Oh yeah.
And then like the energy that you're putting off, if you don't think that person likes you, then you're not going to put like a positive energy out, and then they're not going to like you.
Yeah. Little self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. And so that's, I felt like what I was doing for like 16 through 28, maybe 30. I don't know. Yeah. So I think, I don't know, my 30s, and then also this new like role that I've had, and like being able to like dive more into like my own personal development.
I'm very much the mindset of everything is coincidence, and then we make meaning after. Like that things just happen, and then after they happen, we find meaning from them. Like we create our own meaning after the fact. But you're in the other end, where you're like, things come together a certain way because it's supposed to.
Because it's supposed to, and because, again, there's some action that's happening that made that action happen. Like, I don't know, I want to use like our meeting, for example. So our meeting was through Desert Hearts. It was when I worked for GoPro at the time. You were filming, you reached out for, cameras. And then I was like kind of in the community. And then it was kind of this like friendship that then created from that. I personally believe that we would have been friends if that didn't happen. But I feel like the action that was happening behind the scenes was that I worked for GoPro. I had like kind of this tool that you wanted eventually to use. And that was kind of, to me, I don't feel like that was a coincidence that happened. I felt like that we were both like living in these parts of our lives. They were like this path, our path was going to intersect at some point. That was what brought us together. But I personally believe that we would have connected if I hadn't worked for GoPro, you weren't filming for Desert Hearts, it would have been a different path. So like for me, I think of that less as like a coincidence that we then have this like really beautiful friendship now, as more of like that was what happened to like kind of bring us together, sort of a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, I want to believe that. But then there's this other part of me that's just like, we're just on a rock that exploded and things are just in motion, and sometimes those things line up the right way.
I get it.
I mean, who knows? We're never going to know the right answer to it. But
and then it's great to have different perspective.
It's fun to talk about. Yeah. I believe we probably would have met regardless anyway. Yeah. Like, I guess this gets into like, does everything happen for a reason? I don't know.
And then that removes the whole coincidence thing from happening.
Yeah. I don't know.
No, it's. I think that again, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Just the positive thinking, or whatever your thought pattern is. Like, I guess it's just going back, like moments that happen, like serendipity, like that, like kind of moments that you can't explain. But it's such a strong pull, and it's like whatever happened, it's like it's unexplainable to the point that in my mind couldn't be a coincidence, because like the force and the energy and like whatever the output was so strong that like in order for it, I don't know, that's just where I feel like there are no coincidences, because it's almost like a magnetic force that it's bound to happen. And so it's almost like, whether it's like, do you want to use destiny or fate or whatever, I just feel like it's everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. And I just, to me, and I guess this just maybe goes on another tangent of like, what is life?
Oh, let's go there, Eric.
It's like, I don't know. I am firmly in the camp of just, we're probably reliving this moment infinite numbers of times. Like things are just constantly now. Like this moment is forever. It's always happening. It's always reoccurring. And I don't know. I feel like the script is already written in a way. Like the things are like, I am a very, well, I wouldn't say very, I believe that free will is an illusion, because everything can be boiled down to brain processes and, physical things in motion leads to even thoughts and outcomes and things like that. And
I think that there is, I don't know, just like another example would be like Kevin and I's relationship. It was one of those things that was like a light switch and like floodgates. Like the amount of times that we ran into each other from like in yoga class, he was 2 people down, like in the grocery store, we're walking down the hall, in the farmer's market line, he's behind me. I literally open my door, he skateboards by. For it to happen that many times, in my mind, like that can't be coincidence all that time. And yet we didn't have any interaction with one another to like, neither one of us, I wasn't stalking him, he wasn't stalking me. Like it was one of those things.
So he says.
Yeah, so I say that it goes back to almost that magnetic pull that like it was bound to happen. Yeah. So that's just where I feel like coincidence just seems too random and not intentional. And I guess I just live life as like, just, it's, I don't know, it's a little bit more intentional, I guess.
Yeah. I totally get that from you. I mean, being your friend, I see that. Maybe your mindsets during those times were so similar and everything leading up to your life in that point had happened in just the way that made it so you thought about going to yoga class at the same time. Yeah. And like the timing just synchronized in a way that made it inevitable, but still coincidental. Like still, maybe if Kevin would have been born 6 days later, his life timing would have been off some and he would have not been in the same places at the same time as you. I don't know.
I also believe that we're meant to be together, and that was scripted. So going back to your point of like, was that even really awareness of a choice that we then decided to be together, or more so just like, this is what is kind of happened, which going back to the music thing, this is something I feel like that I was like made to do. Yeah. And it's like, I've been almost denying myself of that for so long. And it's like immediately once I allowed myself to accept almost my own gift, that all these magnetic pulls kind of started happening because I went through that opening. And there's a lot of these moments, like even this podcast, I feel like this is another really big opening for me. I've never done a podcast, like doing this podcast for you. This is a huge opening for who knows what this is going to turn into, like for your life. But I feel like that goes back to the action that you put out with intention, pulls you in a direction that's going to create like more magic for yourself, if that's kind of what you're like wanting to create. Yeah, that's fair. I don't disagree about the opening thing. I think that's very true. And I've always looked, well, not always, I've maybe over the past year looked at this podcast as less about what it is doing for me now and more about what it might allow me to do in 10 years. That's so exciting. Where it's like not about, how many views I get on this one. Yeah. It's more about getting the reps in to be ready for whatever comes later, right? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. How did you not kill your dream whenever it didn't happen? Like, how do you turn 30, realize, look at your life and say, I didn't accomplish this dream, I'm just going to forget it. Yeah. Like, how did you not do that? The voice inside of me was so loud that it was like I was like starving a part of me. It was like I was starving myself. So it's like, imagine if like or like you're not watering your plants, you know, like if you're like literally watching your plants die, if you have like it in you to keep your plants alive and like want to be someone that's like nurturing, you have to do that for yourself as well. So for me, it just felt like I had reached a point that like I'm literally starving this creative side of myself. I'm super creative, and I was trying to find it in other outlets, like, you know, at the time it was like dancing, you know, on the dance floor or, you know, maybe being outside and doing gardening and stuff, always going back to like what it really was singing and writing. And so I eventually couldn't deny it anymore. So I think for me, I let the age thing kind of go, because that was a really big thing in my 20s. Like, I'm too old. I'm never going to make it. And again, I was comparing myself to thinking I had to be this like, I had to be famous.
Right. It's like, what do you mean by make it is the question.
Yeah.
Like, what is making it? Right?
To me, yeah. At the time, like in my 20s or 16, I thought that meant like having to, you know, go to Hollywood and get an agent and like do all these things, which I still think could be really exciting. But now it's more of just like, no, I have this gift to share, and I'm going to share it because it's what I know I'm meant to do, however big or small that scope looks. And not having to feel like I have to fit this mold that I thought of, like what I thought it had to be, and almost just kind of like release myself to the process of like, if that means writing a song and singing it and recording it at my house and just playing it for myself, like that feels good. If that means writing a song, recording it, sending it to someone, them listening to it and liking it, that's awesome. Going through that process, then maybe it means actually like recording a song and getting it like released on an album. That's awesome. And so it's like these little steps, once I kind of just started small, it almost made my dream less intimidating and kind of taking it more in like bite-sized pieces. Because I think initially I was like, I had this really grand vision, and then I was like, okay, how am I going to get from here to here? And it seemed really intimidating. So I was always like being like, you're never going to be able to do that. Like, you're never going to be able to do that sort of a thing. Or like, oh, you missed the boat. You didn't go. You're too old. It's like I was kind of giving myself all these excuses, versus going back to kind of like square one, starting from like literally where it needs to start. If I want to write my own music, is like literally writing my own music, starting there and having that almost be the floodgate to the process. That's kind of how I found to fulfill my dream is just kind of starting small and kind of building on that success that I have personally, and then having that be met with other things that kind of come along the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. It's this conversation is like tying into itself nicely. Like, I feel as though the writing thing, it's about the windows, right? If you're not doing the work leading up to the opening of the window, you're not going to take that step through the opening. Yeah. Right. So you were still writing all the time? You never quit writing?
I never quit writing. No. Writing was always something. I mean, I love a handwritten card. My family and I give like multiple cards, like for birthdays and Christmases. Like, we usually do a funny one, a sad one.
Yeah, nice.
But no, I never really stopped writing. And it was something too, like, I think my writing transferred a little bit more into like my work, because I studied communications and like I had to write a lot for work, whether it was, you know, press releases or working with media journalists, more technical writing. Yeah, exactly. But there was still a creative element to it, whether it was like, I don't know, an athlete interview or, you know, there was always something part of it that still allowed me to keep that going. It wasn't necessarily writing songs the whole time, but it was a skill that I feel like I have developed over the course of my life. But going back and, again, slowing down and writing more of like the poetry or songs, or even just like one lines, or hearing a word and being like, oh, I really like that word. Or like that happened the other day with like ebb and flow. And I was like, oh, that would be, there's a song there. Like just like talking about, I don't know, my songs, I also feel like I'm a very visual learner. So they are very visual to me, and how, I don't know, there's almost like movement to them. And so, yeah, it's just like I'll have these like little things of inspiration, or I'll see something that happens. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Or like a color or something. And like, I'm really pulling inspiration from a lot of different places.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's like getting a portal or something. Yeah. A different portal opening up in your mind into reality.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
And even listening to like the process of me writing my own thing and having my own melody, or having Evan and Marbs like send a track and like kind of getting
Seeing with
inspiration
that,
from the
yeah.
music too. That's been really fun. I'm excited to explore that more too. Cause it was interesting, right? Like I come up with the melody and then they kind of have to create whatever it is around like the whole, like what it sounds like on like the track side and all the instruments that they're going to pick. And like, I mean, they have so many to choose from. It's
Yeah.
like, so for them, it would be really cool to, continue that process as well. And even like listening to songs that are already existing songs and getting inspiration from those and like changing the melody a little bit as well. Like, I don't know, there's just like a lot of different ways I feel like that I've kind of drawn inspiration, and it's kind of endless. So like, that's what's really exciting to me. It's like I'm, like there's no limit of I guess things you can tap into. At least for me, that's how I felt. And I'm sure you can take that from like this too. Like this is your own kind of creative path of how people produce podcasts, or, you know, if like you're an artist in whatever way, like drawing inspiration from other things that may not seem, I don't know, maybe as directly tied in, but to be able to kind of pull some like, oh, like, yeah, like that.
Yeah, for sure. Just staying as open as possible to the spectrum of possibilities. What's next?
What is next?
What's next, Katie? You mentioned that you guys are going to start thinking about more music in April or May.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Hopefully more EPs. I ultimately, big vision is to sing in front of like a live audience, packed dance floor, like live with them playing. Like these songs would be awesome. It's been really fun to be doing it in the studio.
Yeah.
The biggest audience was for my birthday for the release, which was, I don't know, 8 people. But I don't know when that's going to be. So that's kind of just, I know that's what everybody's hoping for, is like getting back to that space. And then, continuing to write more. I want to go on some trips, like as far as, road trip or flying somewhere that will allow me to, when I'm in nature, it's like really when I get like a lot of my, my downloads. Yeah. And in the shower. So it's kind of just paying attention to that, and I'm continuing to write.
Do you want to do a solo project ever? Is that ever
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And I would love to work with other like females. Would be really cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to do projects with, other females in the space that I like admire. And I've gotten advice just like, keep writing, keep putting music out, keep continuing to do it. And I think for me, like that's ultimately the goal, is again, just keep kind of taking these little steps and going back to what I know like works. And working with other people would be incredible, and doing my own thing would be incredible. Like performing, like going on tour, doing this full time, like all of those things, like that trajectory would be like actually saying it out loud. It feels really good.
Yeah.
Cause that is like, that would be awesome.
Yeah. You want to be full-time singer.
It would be really incredible to be a full-time singer. Yeah. And like make a real living at it. And being able to travel the world and like, perform and dance and like look out at a whole audience and of people and feel their energy and hear them singing my songs.
Yeah,
like
that'd be cool.
That would be so cool. But I'm just kind of taking like little baby steps until then. And if this is kind of more of like just, because who knows when that's going to be. If this is more what needs to happen now, is just like working, in the studio, putting out music, performing on Twitch, like more virtually, that still brings me so much joy and allows me to still develop a name for myself. Katie Kilbride.
Yeah, Katie Kilbride.
So Katie Kilbride, was my maiden name, and it was, I went by KK like my whole life. Like that's what some of my friends still call me. And when I got married to Kev, I changed my name, and so using Katie Kilbride, I feel like is a really big gift to that girl who didn't believe in herself.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you that about if you ever revisit your child self. And it feels really, good to be able to give that back to her. Yeah.
And almost thinking of myself in like the third person, but it does feel like a little bit of a separation because I had denied that part of myself for so long. Mm-hmm. So now almost like almost integrating with myself. It kind of sounds crazy. It's like sounds a little far out, but like I feel more integrated with myself now than I ever have been because of this experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I was actually wondering why you decided to go with Kilbride. I thought it was just because the alliteration is cool.
Yeah, the alliteration is cool. I'm a big fan of alliteration. And in talking with Evan and Marbs about it, they really liked the name. It is me, you know, and it is a little bit of a separation from like who I am now as like an artist and who I am as like a wife and a friend and as like a professional and like all of that stuff now in like my work. So for me, it was, there's a lot of deep meaning behind like why I chose that and not just, you know, Katie Hackett. So Katie Kilbride, 1L. My friends growing up in middle school and elementary school would like always tease me. They're like, Katie killed the bride. And my friend Matt, my best friend growing up, Matt, his last name was Hyde. He's like, and Matt will hide the brides and Katie will go and find them. I don't know, little fun, like schoolyard fun that you like poke fun at people's names and stuff. But for me, it's like who I am. Like I still have such a tie to Katie Kilbride. It's also just to carry on that name. As an only child, you know, I took my dad's last name. My mom actually has a different last name. She's Linda Morgan. So I grew up in a household with like very strong independent woman. She didn't take my dad's last name. And that was fine. And I felt like in school, I kind of had to explain myself. I was like, oh, your parents like married? I'm like, yeah, they're married. Why? Like, it was kind of like a weird thing. It's like, yeah, why do you keep asking me this sort of thing? It's like, it's okay that, so now that I do have my husband's last name, and kind of being able to give, I don't know, an honoring almost to my maiden name and who I was kind of growing up and to my dad as well, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, I'm sure he's happy about
He's
it.
super happy. PK.
PK.
Love you, Dad. Love you, Mom.
Shout out to PK. Do you ever feel, like I wonder this about artists who take a pseudonym or don't use their normal name. Does it ever, and you're still really early in your career, obviously, so you might not have a solid answer to this, but do you ever feel like it creates some weird disconnect between who you are in your day-to-day life and who you are when you're performing or on Instagram or something? Like you're almost two separate people? Or, does it ever do that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like creating like a persona
like
of a character, of sorts. And because it is my name, it's almost, again, going back to that person or that soul, that essence that I had denied and kind of almost forgotten about for so long until now. And then to be able to like give that gift back to myself, I feel like it's, again, going back to like that word integration. It's like allowing me to integrate with that person. And it allows me to have some anonymity in like my professional sort of life, because I do still have a very, professional job. And, this whole artist world is different, the Des Arts community. And like, it's not that there's anything like shameful or bad or something you want to hide, but I have found in my professional career that I have kind of kept things separate, even when I wasn't an artist. Like, and this was actually something that one of my old business partners shared with me. He's like, you seem like you're like one Katie in like friend life, and then you're like another Katie in like business life. And I've really contemplated this a lot. And because I didn't know if that was like a good or bad thing. And not necessarily has to be black and white, good or bad. Because he found himself way more the same person in both worlds. It was like one world for him. Whereas for me, I do feel like I am a little bit, maybe, let loose a little bit more in front of my friends, kind of let my guard down. There's just like, there's a little bit more, rawness in like when I'm in that space versus like in the professional space. I feel like I want to be a little bit more professional. So like maybe I wouldn't do the same things, in those worlds. So I think the same goes with like my artist account and just like, I don't know, even like the photo shoot that we went on, like, and like the outfits that we wore. And like, I just felt so free and so much fun. We had the best time. Myles did an amazing job. We went out to Anza Borrego and
shout out Myles. Second nature.
Yeah. You did a phenomenal job, man. Oh my gosh. We had so much fun. So yeah, we went and shot out in the desert. He had this insane vision. We had this like awesome triangle light box, which is one of my favorite shapes. It's actually the shape of my wedding ring. Again, no coincidences.
I don't know.
And yeah, it was just so fun. Like it was, again, my first photo shoot. There were so many firsts this year, but just allowing me to really be free and like express myself. And that kind of Katie isn't maybe necessarily how I would present myself in front of my work. Again, not that they would judge or that there would be any, but it's just, I personally have found, I don't know, for some reason I like to keep it separate. And it's really hard for me to decide, is that is that serving me in like the best way, or like should it be more streamlined into one? I don't know. How do you feel?
Well, from looking at your what you've just said about your reasons for doing it, and the way you're able to separate kind of the two major forces of who you are. You know, there's one that's like a very professional, get things done kind of vibe, and then one that's, I'm gonna hang out with my friends and just be light and happy. And I feel as though there is value in separating those. I don't know if it's good or bad. I feel as though they could exist together in both realms, but maybe having that distinct line between work and play is helpful. I mean, I'm different in that I think that I'm more the same in all of my things, but I don't know. I think that those two sides of your personality are very strong.
Yeah.
The productive Katie is a very strong, I don't know, independent force, right? And so is the other one, but in a more playful way.
Yeah, and then I kind of question that too, because I'm like, well, maybe I don't have to be so like, and this is something I'm actively trying to work on in the workspace, or work Katie. I take things seriously, but like almost like sometimes the energy that I put off when I'm taking things really seriously is really intense. And that intensity isn't something I necessarily carry on to like my playful side. So I'm trying to bring a little bit more of my playful side into work. And because I've noticed that about myself. It also goes around to like the need for like control and wanting things done in like a very specific way. And like, that's like been a lifelong goal of just trying to like relinquish some of that. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. I don't know, Tyler, if you're listening, you have still made me think about this, and I think about it often 4 years later. So thank you for allowing me to like contemplate this still, but I still haven't figured out if it's good or bad. And again, those are probably not the best words to use to describe the differences, but
I mean, it's gotten you where you are. So it's been useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been useful. Maybe that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been great talking with you.
It's been great talking with you, Eric. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of you too. Just like all the people that you had come on here, and I don't know. It's just like this road is just starting for you. I feel like you're so natural. You make it just seem so easy. And
do you have fun?
Yeah, I had the best time. Cool. Like definitely I would love to come back.
For sure. It's actually funny that, well, it's not funny, but it's coincidence perhaps. No, but I for a while I've been, you know, pretty much everyone in our friend group, I'm like, ooh, this would be a sick person to chat with. What can I talk about?
Yeah.
And I think it was like in Palm Springs, I was already like, I'm just going to ask Katie if she would want to come on. And then you started singing, and then this whole thing happened, and it was like, ooh, perfect timing to get you on. So,
I mean, we have some incredible friends around us, and all the dads in our group.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, it's been awesome. And, I'm just really excited to see where this journey takes me. I'm excited to share this with my community. And if you want to check out any of my new music, you can go on Instagram at katie.kilbride with one L. And also Birds on a Wire is live and direct, available on Beatport. We would love the support as artists. If you wanted to purchase the EP, that would be awesome. And if not, you can go to SoundCloud and Spotify.
Check it out.
It's pretty wild to see my name on Spotify and SoundCloud in the same playlist that I have, all these other people that I've been listening to. So that was a pretty surreal moment. Took a couple screenshots of this is me. Yeah. Feels really good. And stay tuned for new music. We're going to get back in the studio, and we'll be back performing other stuff. I don't know when that goes live, but I just really want to thank you, and I really want to thank Marbs and Evan for, again, inviting me into the most sacred space that they could have, into their very intimate studio space, and to be a part of something that they have been doing for a while, and kind of I don't know, took me under their wing and allowed me to share something that's really been special. So really grateful.
I'm stoked for you, Katie.
Thanks, Eric.
And it's a pleasure to be your friend and get to see this kind of thing take off for you. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Awesome.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love you.
Love you too. Bye.